Hey guys, it's Trey Sada.
And Josh Bishop.
And welcome back to another episode, Season 2, Episode 2 of 2View Crew. And we have a really awesome guest coming on, former agent Matt Babcock, and he does a lot of draft evaluating right now. So we're going to go in, deep dive into the draft and his background and everything that you think that an agent does and what they really do.
Yeah, and despite, the whole coronavirus going on, Babcock Hoops, according to him, is still busy. They're 100%. Still evaluating everyone using film. And Trace and I think this will be a fun episode. We have some pretty different opinions on people.
Yeah. When do we don't?
Well, sometimes we don't.
That's also true,
with
yeah.
The Luka draft, I feel like we were kind of lockstep. But I know, with Obi Toppin, I'm a big Obi Toppin guy. I think he's a top 3, 4.
It's not about him being top 3, 4 talent. Honestly, I hope we it's not about that. I just think this draft is historically weak, and I don't see Obi Toppin as a perennial all-star. I see him as a guy who makes the all-star team 1 or 2 times.
Well, you never know.
You're right.
They called Andrew Wiggins Maple Jordan, and he was consensus 1, so it's the draft is kind of a crapshoot.
That draft was crazy. You're 100% right, it's a crapshoot, because I like Jabari Parker out of that draft a lot.
I did too.
I love Jabari Parker.
I did too.
Yeah. It's interesting because, people talk about the drafts, and we were right on the Luka draft, and you were a little bit wrong on the Trey one.
I was very wrong. I was 100% wrong.
I thought his ceiling was basically what it is right now. So I'm a little bit wrong too. I thought it was going to be Isaiah Thomas that MVP year. He's not as efficient as Isaiah Thomas was that one year where he was in MVP contention, but he's very good offensively, like Isaiah Thomas, and he's better has better vision, more assist qualities. I guess he's more of a point guard than Isaiah Thomas is.
Yeah. Isaiah was a pure scorer, but
yeah.
I think I'm shocked often at how wrong I was about Trae Young. I mean,
I think you are in the majority. I think most of the people are wrong about Trae
Young. But I'm
Young.
happily.
Yeah. Oh, as a Hawks fan,
it's pretty great having, the number 2 guy in the league in assists behind LeBron. That's pretty cool. And he shoots like crazy.
Yeah, just imagine how bad the Hawks would be if he wasn't on the team, I try not to imagine it because it'd be horrible. But we'd have people still putting out stats like Cam Reddish and being compared to Kevin Durant and LeBron James. I won't name names.
We love you, Kevin.
We love you. We love you,
Kevin.
But come on. But yeah, talking about the draft, the crapshoot, we were talking about this before, the concept of how good you are drafting is really going to be proven right now. Because we can't see the players in one-on-one workouts. The teams that don't draft well are going to struggle this year because they can't see the players one-on-one. So they're going to have to build it off tape. And it's hard to really evaluate a player off tape if you can't get the individual workout,
Yeah, in some ways, I think it might be possibly even easier this year to hit on the surefire players, though, because you're not going to talk yourself into a guy who dominated a workout, but really wasn't there all year. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that I like high floors, and I think that's why I like Toppin. So you often bring up that he's at best 2-time All-Star or something like that, but he's at worst rotation level player.
Yeah, no, I'll agree.
So I like players that have high floors, and I'll sacrifice on the ceiling for that. And I think there's a lot of players in this draft like that, and I think that we might see less chances being taken because all you've got is what they've done in college or overseas.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting, and I hope that Corona doesn't affect the NBA draft enough to where it's not going to be televised, because now it's being said, rumors are circulating that the NFL draft is going to be canceled completely. So I don't know what's going to go on with that, but honestly, I think the biggest thing is we talk about this boom bust. Corona is definitely going to play in a factor. The teams that draft well, like the Lakers, the Heat, etc., late in the rounds are going to really pick well.
Do the Lakers draft well?
Yeah, they do. They've always found some good talent out of it. Kuzma, he's a 29 overall pick. What's his name? Julius Randle wasn't bad. I mean, he was a lottery pick.
7.
Yeah, he was.
They took Lonzo Ball 2.
Yeah, Lonzo's a good player. I don't know if he's a second overall pick player, but if versus the only other person you would have drafted before him, I probably would have drafted De'Aaron Fox just because how well they matched up.
Well, I think part of with the Lakers is I don't even know if they draft bad players. I just think it's really hard for rookies to play well in LA. Because if you notice, Brandon Ingram and Lonzo have been way better.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's funny you talk about Brandon Ingram because I was so high on Brandon Ingram with that draft. I liked him. He was my number 1 coming out in that draft. And to him, to be in the conversation where he's better than Ben Simmons potentially. I think I've been always down on Ben Simmons. He's a fantastic player. Hate watching him play. Hate his limitations. Hate the Sixers. So all of that factors in. As you can see, shoot a three, coward. Shoot a damn three.
Neither of us. If you want to ask anything about the Sixers, we are not your guys because we both just personally don't like the Sixers. Ben Simmons just seems like a jerk.
Yep.
Joel can be.
I like Joel.
Their entire team mood is like when they're winning, they're tough guys, they're rough riders. But when they're losing, they're sobbing in the locker room, and it.
Hey man, they have the leading contender for fake tough guy. The guy, they have Simmons, but it's funny because I hated that team even more with Jimmy Butler on that team. Everyone loves oh my God, Jimmy Butler in the third stringer. Jimmy Butler in this. Jimmy Butler literally will tell everybody on the street how hard he works. He'll go up to the homeless man and be like, "Hey man, did you know I was homeless? You should take yourself out of homeless too. Okay?" He'll tell you look at me now, bro. I hate that attitude because it's swagger and confidence. I love that feeling. But Jimmy Butler will tell everybody in the league how hard he worked just to get a second round exit every single year.
Okay, well, I don't feel that strongly about Jimmy Butler as Trace, but I do feel that strongly about Ben Simmons, least favorite player in the league.
Yeah. Just building off that, I think it's going to be a really interesting interview with Matt and just everything going on. He has a lot of insight in the draft that a lot more than me and you do,
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Being quarantined inside, playing Call of Duty, and
and Yu-Gi-Oh! Can't forget Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels. Shout out.
But yeah.
Well,
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's it. We're going to have a great show coming with Matt Babcock. Thanks for tuning in, and looking forward to let us know how it is.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of 2B Crew. We have a very special guest, former NBA agent Matt Babcock, and he also does a lot of stuff with the draft, so we're excited to have him on, talk about content and the draft in this very troubling time. Thanks for coming on, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're super excited to have you. We brushed up on our homework a little bit for who's kind of in the lottery for this year, and I noticed that from my notes, I didn't really see any just surefire number ones. It felt like everybody I looked at, I wasn't 100% sure about. And perhaps the most naturally talented prospect, I am not a big fan of, because I've just seen, I would say Lamell Ball is probably the most naturally talented in terms of passing the ball and just flow on offense. Mm-hmm. But he also has moments I noticed where he just forgets to play defense. He kind of falls asleep. Yeah. He takes 30-foot shots, and it's like, I don't know if I really like that. What's the vibe you're getting with other agents and with the NBA about who's going to go number one, or who's the top three, or what's the consensus out there?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Obviously, before a draft lottery, it's just, hey, what's the order going to be? And I think towards the top of the draft, there is quite a bit of parity. I personally, I've got 7 guys in my first tier, that being Wiseman, Edwards, Toppin, Ball, Abdia, Okongwu, and Killian Hayes.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of it's going to depend on who's picking where. The team. I think team needs are a little bit more prioritized this year than in recent years. Mm-hmm, yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, kind of going with that whole draft process. Can you tell us how you got into being an agent and how that, started?
Yeah, sure. So, I was born into a basketball family. My dad and 2 uncles have all worked in the NBA since, my oldest uncle started working in the NBA in the late 70s. So I was, born into it. Always planned on being a coach or going to scouting. I finished up at the University of Arizona and was trying to get my first job in basketball. And my first job was an internship with Wasserman Media Group, which at the time was the biggest sports agency in all of sports. I did mostly on-court workouts. I still was hoping to be a coach. Mm-hmm. From there, I took a coaching job in Italy, did that for a short while, and then I was offered a job by Excel Sports Management to essentially be like a junior agent, and that's kind of how it all started. I didn't really have a plan to be an agent. I didn't go to law school. I kind of just got a good job opportunity and just kind of ran with it, and one thing led to another, and 11 years later, I was an agent and decided, hey, you know what? I talked to my wife and was like, I kind of want to get back closer to my roots and do something a little bit more basketball, directly basketball related, and made a switch, and here I am covering the draft and talking hoops a lot.
That's awesome.
Nice. So, if you wanted to be a coach, you probably played. Did you ever play in high school or anything like that?
Yeah, I played in high school. I was a pretty good player in high school, and then I played at a junior college in Florida. And I was recruited by some low and mid Division Ones and schools, and I hurt my knee, kind of screwed up my recruitment. I decided to walk on at University of Arizona, so I played at Arizona.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. That's awesome. How is the like with that going in? Do you think being around all this basketball? What's been your favorite part of just being around the basketball world?
I mean, that's a tough question. There's so many different parts and angles and levels, and I just love the game overall. And I mean, I'm like you guys. I'm sure I'm I'm hurting right now. I feel like I'm in depression mode. It's live hoops to watch. It's not really answering your question, but I feel very fortunate to have my background and grow up in the game and to be able to be around it and do it every single day. I mean, I wake up and checking stats and talking to people about different stuff and about basketball and I love the game, man.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I mean, I didn't mean to gloss over it, but I mean, playing at Arizona, that's a basketball powerhouse. So, like, what position did you play? Is there anybody of note that you played with that we would know? And like, how did that go for you?
Yeah, no. So I was a combo guard. I was more of an undersized shooting guard shooter. Never played. Our team was unbelievable. We so my last year there, we lost in the Elite Eight to Illinois, which was led by Darren Williams. I thought we had the most talent in the entire country. I mean, our starting lineup was Mustafa Shakur, Salim Stoudemire, Hassan Adams, Ivan Radenovic, and then Channing Frye.
Wow.
And so we had a I mean, that was just our starting lineup. Our backups were good too. And, needless to say, I didn't play a whole lot at all actually.
No, that's awesome. That's really cool. How'd that how'd that kind of impact your kind of mindset of going into basketball? Being around it, being part of such a special team like that, being around a powerhouse. Did that help you make contacts? Did that help you with just kind of being around it all?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was sort of where I was at in my short college career. Kind of, with my knee injuries and the recruitment not being where I quite wanted, I chose to go to a big school like that to have the experience and to network and kind of see how that all worked, knowing that my next step was going to be in basketball. I mean, I didn't, like I said, I didn't know it was going to be in the agency business, but I knew, being at a program like that, it would be a great experience and I would meet a lot of interesting people and learn. And I definitely did that. I'm really happy that I ended up having that experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you would, tell us, take us behind the curtain of what an agent actually does. I know that you represent players generally, and I guess you negotiate contracts and handle trades and stuff like that. Take us behind the curtain of what it is exactly that you do, and maybe some of the people you represented, and maybe a cool story that came from that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, an agent does a lot. I mean, technically on paper, we're paid to negotiate contracts. That's the simplest part of an agent's job. I think a lot of times, at least with me, I kind of handled a little bit of everything with a player's life. It just sort of being an advisor and a life coach. And then we happen to get paid for negotiating their contracts, right? But yeah, technically, we're the middleman for a player. To make money on his likeness and his basketball ability. So whether that be from a team, we broker that, or any kind of marketing opportunities, we would broker that as well. So that's the simple version of what an agent does, but it usually encompasses a lot more than that.
100%. Who did you represent, if anybody?
So I worked for a number of different agents and agencies, and ended up launching my own agency at one point too. And so I worked with all kinds of different players. When I was with the big agencies, I was never the primary agent for our guys, but we had all kinds of big names: Kevin Garnett, Chauncey Billups, Jason Kidd, Paul Pierce, Ron Artest. I mean, so I kind of worked with a lot of the big name guys, even though I was just a younger, complimentary agent. And then when I went on my own, I kind of found a niche. I got away from the big company stuff. And a big part of it is I really didn't like the recruiting for top level guys. It was pretty competitive and cutthroat. It just I didn't have the stomach for it, to be honest. So I found a niche of getting more second round type picks, fringe NBA players, and having a lot of players that would play overseas. And that was sort of ended up being sort of my bread and butter. Yeah, so during that time I represented some of the fringe guys. I represented Miroslav Radulica, a Serbian center playing in the NBA for 3 or 4 years. We had DJ Steffens from Memphis, Jordan Mickey from
I remember Jordan Mickey.
Yeah.
We actually did the largest deal for a second round pick in NBA history at that point for Jordan. So I mean that was a success of ours. And but yeah, I just had a lot of guys like that weren't the huge names, but I was kind of behind the scenes, kind of moving and shaking.
So you said you didn't have the stomach for it. I'm sure you could have kept doing it if you wanted to, but what is it about going after those top level guys versus a Jordan Mickey that made you like going for the Jordan Mickeys more?
Yeah.
Well, I think obviously it's a case by case deal. Every situation's a little bit different, but what would happen is a lottery pick or a first round pick. One thing with the recruiting that's really important to the conversation is marketing. And so I like to operate as an independent agent, and I have partnerships and I do a lot of marketing on my own, but I kind of lack some of the firepower that a big company would. And it's just how I chose to kind of lay out our infrastructure. And so I was at a disadvantage from the get-go anyway, just being an independent agent compared to these big hitter corporate companies. So you got that in mind. And then a lot of times, the high profile guys, the recruitment isn't real clean. I mean, sort of, what's kind of come out in the last couple of years with the FBI investigation, there's a layer cake of different, some shape or form of bribery. And so I'm not saying that happens every single time, but that happens a lot. And that's just not really my MO. And I try to avoid that as much as I could, but it's in that business, it's kind of like operating with one arm tied behind your back. So I kind of just remove myself from the situation of those kind of players. Cause like I said, I wasn't necessarily equipped for it from a marketing standpoint. And then I just like things pretty straight up and clean.
Yeah, well, 100%. we commend you for that. That's really cool. I mean, like the second round guys need representation too, and I'm sure that they really appreciate you, and I'm sure a lot of them are probably really appreciative of the personal touch that you can offer them, and keeping everything clean. But,
I hope so.
And I'm sure you worked a lot of you worked around the NBA drafts. Can you talk us what the process is like being an agent and then now just being on the other side of things where you're kind of evaluating talent?
Yeah, the pre-draft process. I mean, it starts in March and April fully where we're recruiting, an agent's recruiting, trying to sign players, hop on a plane left and right, taking last-minute meetings, and it's pretty stressful. And then you figure out who your rookie class is going to be. I genuinely wouldn't like to represent more than 4 or 5 rookies myself per draft because it's so much work. And the work of it is you're the middleman between the player and the teams. And so the first step is to gather information from the teams. How do you value my client? How do you see him translating to the NBA? And that's how you kind of get a pulse on what a player's market value is. And from there, now you're the middleman to help schedule his workout. Team visits, workout schedule, which at times can be up to 15 plus trips and workouts for a player, and so it's just a lot of day-to-day management. Stay organized, and I mean the most an agent will ever work is during the pre-draft for a rookie, incoming rookie.
Yeah. So what is it like for those prospects, mid or top level, going through that process? Is it really hard on them, and do you have to kind of help them through that, or what's that look like for them?
Yeah, it depends on the level of the player. I mean, the higher up the player, the less work there is. I mean, it's more of, you're managing their marketing rather than a workout schedule. I mean, for example, some of those guys we listed before, the my tier 1 guys, they're probably going to, work out for 1, 2, 3 teams, if that. And so there's not a whole lot to schedule, but there's a lot of marketing opportunities going on, right? And so, the further you go down the draft, the more competitive it is to move up. And so, I mean, for like a second round pick, like a solid second round pick, essentially everybody's an option, because if you go undrafted, you're a free agent. And so it just depends, that there's the high level guys, which I think is a piece of cake, representation wise, to like a solid second round pick. And then, if you got a guy that's, a borderline pick, or more of like a summer league type guy, that's a hard job too, because you're pretty much having to knock everybody's door down. Like, hey, take a look at my guy, like, please, and you're sort of at the mercy of the teams, but it could be a frustrating job. But yeah, it really, the job of an agent really just changes depending on the player you're representing.
100%. And, I know you are doing a lot of draft stuff. Do you have any fits for certain teams in the lottery? Who do you think goes where? Or who fits best?
We're looking at updating our mock draft tomorrow, and so I mean, looking at the most recent slottings. I mean, which is I'm assuming going to stick until they decide to do a draft lottery. Which who knows what that will be. So Golden State's got number one. I mean, I've been hot on Wiseman for them for most of the year. I mean, I think it could be debated. Could they look at Anthony Edwards, Obi Toppin, Onyeka Okongwu? I think all of those guys are going to be in the mix. I personally think Wiseman's a perfect fit because they're in a situation where they want to win now. I mean, they've got these multiple All-Star Hall of Fame level guys that are still probably towards the tail end of their prime, but in their prime, they might be able to win another ring or two. And some teams don't get that opportunity at all. So I mean, if they're able to add a piece that they could stick in right away, I think they will. And I think Wiseman fits that bill perfectly. And Cleveland, the second pick is a little interesting too. They've used 2 lottery picks on point guards the last 2 years with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. For me, Anthony Edwards would be the next top guy. And does he fit? I don't know. And it seemed like they're investing in Kevin Porter.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. Minnesota, I would love Obi Toppin there. I think he'd be so perfect next to Karl Towns. And I think I'm going to go with Okongwu to Atlanta at 4. Even though they just brought in Capella, I think Okongwu is too good to pass up there.
Yeah.
But those guys, those first 4, that's where I'm leaning right now of updating our mock draft with those picks.
Okay, interesting. So building off that, being an agent, how much fluff is there between the relationship between media and agents? Like, how much of it is what we see as a general public is true, and how much of it's just BS rumors that help out your client or who you're representing?
I think there is a lot of BS out there. I mean, I think there's a number of guys in each draft that are hyped up in the media and among fans more so than they are behind closed doors with agents and teams and whatnot. It really just depends. I mean, I think sometimes there's good information out there and sometimes there's not. And, really with how I try and do everything in my life and business is I look at everything, from an isolated standpoint, and each player situation is a little bit different, and just take it case by case.
Yeah. Is there a player in this draft that you would say fits that billing where there's maybe more hype for them in the media, but agents and teams are really not as interested as the media seems to think?
The name that would come to mind there, I don't know as far as agents go. I think they're probably on more of the media bandwagon. But Cole Anthony.
I hate Cole Anthony.
I question Cole Anthony quite a bit, and don't get me wrong, he's a talented kid. Yeah. I just don't think he's as well thought of by NBA teams and people within the industry as he is by fans and the media. Mm-hmm. I'm a little concerned with his ability to be a point guard at the next level. I mean, he's a pretty, tunnel vision scorer, self-serving guy. Mm-hmm. And even though he's talented, I think there needs to be a good role for him to sort of be himself. Mm-hmm. And I question, is he good enough to be the main guy with the ball in his hands, primary option in offense, being like that. So that's the one guy that comes to mind. And then personally, I've battled with people all year on Tyrese Maxey. I know there are teams that do like him. Yeah. I don't think it's as extreme as it is with Cole. Mm-hmm. I just personally, I have him rated lower than most people. I just think he's, I don't think he can play point guard. I think he's an undersized 2 guard, and I like some of the things he does. I have him more of like a late first, early second. Whereas, I think a lot of the media have him as a lottery pick, which
like a late lottery.
I just think it's too high. So, those are 2 names that come to mind.
So, I would say I'm interested to hear another big media guy is Lamell Ball. So your top 7 was almost identical to mine. Like I think highly of Obi Toppin. I don't know why people don't. I really like Wiseman. I really like Edwards. I like Avdia, and I love Okongwu. But I've noticed that I think maybe the most naturally talented flow wise is maybe LaMelo. But there's things I didn't like. But he says he likes LaMelo number 1. So what is it you're hearing about him, and what do you think about LaMelo?
Yeah. So I like LaMelo. I think there has been quite a bit of hype around him, mm-hmm. And so what I like about him is he's got great size. I mean, they list him at 6'7". I think he's probably closer to 6'6". Yeah. So he's a legitimate 6'6" point guard. That's got a knack to make plays. I mean, he's very crafty. He's got the ball on a string. I mean, his handles are tight, and just a natural playmaker. He's got deep range on his shot. I mean, he's not efficient, which I think it's more of shot selection rather than broken mechanics. And so that's something that's just, you hope will just, improve as he matures as a person and as a player. So he's good. I mean, I think that first tier of guys, they can all be on the board depending on who's picking with all the early picks. Is he a guy that I think is clearly in that first 2 or 3 guys? No, not for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be for certain teams. I'm thinking, if like New York, we're going to get number 1. Yeah. I mean, they need to address point guard, right? Is he in the mix? I think he'll be in the mix. Is he the number 1 pick? I don't think I would go there, but, there's a good chance. Some of the issues with him is I don't think he's that athletic. I think he depends more on skill, coordination, and length. Mm-hmm. So he's not very athletic. His body's filling out a little bit, but he's physically weak. And then his decision making. I mean, some of the shots he takes, he plays pretty flashy. Yeah. And sort of the fine line. Okay, he's a playmaker and he's a baller, right? And no pun intended there. But I think he's got to become a little bit more conservative as a player. So those are some of my issues with him, but it's not overly concerning. But again, I don't see him as like, hey, this guy's the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I remember a couple of years ago I was doing a lot of stuff. I've been doing a lot of scouting stuff the last couple of years, especially the Luka draft. And I thought Luka and he thought Luka were the best players in the draft. But it's hard to put, there was a lot of concerns because we see these guys play in the foreign leagues, and everyone knows the EuroLeague is better than college basketball. But the concern with Luka was always he's not quick enough, he's not fast enough, he's not crafty enough to continue to be as good as he was. Obviously, that turned out to be not true. And that's why, he got picked. Well, a lot of concern was that's why he got picked 3rd instead of picking, at 1 or 2. And now I think it's interesting to see the same thing kind of happen with these guys that we see foreign. Like LaMelo is in that same kind of boat. We're seeing him playing the Australian League. How good is the competition? Probably a little better than Division 1, if not a little bit equal depending on the top tier teams. But I think personally, like LaMelo, it's like flashy, but I think the right team drafting him, not the Knicks, but if somebody like the Warriors were to take a chance on him, I think he'd be very special.
Yeah, no, he's definitely got upside. I mean, he can. I think he's somewhat of a high risk, high reward guy because it's just his size and his just natural talent. You're right. He's got major upside. But there's some concerns there too. And I mean, they seem like they've got the off the court stuff with the family and the dad under control. Yeah. But is it somewhat concerning? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I don't think it would necessarily scare me from taking him. Yeah. But I think it's part of the conversation still.
Mm-hmm. So regardless of mock draft, so let's take our order out. Who would you say is your number 1? Because me and him have been disagreeing about this as well. Who's your number 1, regardless of mock draft? Just best prospect.
It's tough.
It's just it is pretty close. It sort of depends on what are you trying to do with your team? Yeah. Because it's just so you got. I'm still high on Wiseman. I understand the argument. Okay, he's a big guy in a game that is kind of getting away from those kind of players. Mm-hmm. He's still 7'1". Yeah. That's a fluid athlete that finishes at the rim, rebounds, block shots, and he's skilled. I mean, I think he's going to be able to shoot threes. So I mean, I'm not going to answer your question directly, but I'll give you a loose answer here. I would probably go with these 3 guys as my top guys: as Wiseman, Edwards, and Toppin, with Okongwu knocking on the door. And not necessarily in that order either. I really have those guys pretty close. They're so different. It's hard to say.
I agree with you, and I liked how you said Okongwu and Toppin because those are the 2 guys that I just don't feel like I've heard enough at the top, especially Toppin. And I'm thinking, I watch him at Dayton, go for 20 and 8 on 63% shooting. He's a freak athlete. The only thing I would say about him is on the defensive end, he's a powerful jumper, but he's almost not like a quick jumper. You know what I mean? So if you can get him on a pump fake, he doesn't get up as quick as like Okongwu. But he just seems so powerful to me. I don't really know why. The highest I see him is like 5 or 6. It's like the highest I see him anywhere.
You're talking about Toppin or Okongwu?
Toppin. I see Okongwu pretty high, but I haven't seen Toppin above 5 or 6, and that's most of them have him 7-ish.
Right. I mean, I think based on my conversations with NBA people, I think most people have him pretty high. Okay. I've even heard teams have him as high as number 1. Wow. Wow. I was in Maui. you had to watch Dayton for several days in a row, and
Yeah.
he's just really good. He's really good. And I mean, defensively, it's not the. I think he's a pretty quick jumper and a good second jumper. Lateral quickness is a little bit of an issue there. I mean, he's a pretty north-south athlete, even though he's elite at being a north-south athlete. But that's where a lot of the comparisons are drawn to Amari Stoudemire. That's how Amari was. I mean, he's very, he's jumps out of the gym and he's if he's coming at you downhill. He's coming hard, but he's not moving his feet that great. Which so I've seen some people put him as as a guy that could be play on the wing. Yeah. I don't see that. No. I think he's a modern power forward.
Yeah, I think he's a forward for sure.
And I'd be shocked if Obi got out of the top 5. I think he's just got too much talent. He's such a dynamic guy offensively.
So, are you still traveling to see these players a lot? And if you are, who's been the most impressive in person, maybe?
Traveled all season long. I mean, I watched a number of different guys. Pretty much watch everybody. Yeah. I mean, Obi Toppin's the guy. I mean, I went into this season excited about him, but I still needed to see more. I hadn't seen him in person last year. Watched just on film and really liked him. And then I saw him in Maui for several days, and he was big time. And then watched him again shortly after that. And he's the guy that seeing him in person moved him up the most. And then I mean, as far as now, I mean, I had planned to travel. I was all set to go to the Big East tournament, and then the Big Ten tournament, followed by the NCAA tournament, and obviously all those plans have been scratched. Now we're just watching a lot of film, working the phones, still doing our homework. It's just plans have changed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So who do you talk to on these meetings? Do you meet with any of the players? Do you talk to the coaches? What's a typical trip like for you?
Yeah, with trips, I'll go to the games early, talk with coaches. Don't talk to the players generally. I think a lot of times that would be inappropriate in that setting. But I'll talk to the assistant coaches, and obviously evaluate the game. A lot of the conversations are really kind of heating up now that the season's over. Yeah. Now I'm dealing with players, parents, agents, talking with other teams, different contacts that know the players, just doing background work. Yeah. And it's interesting. I'm in an interesting spot because I'm technically media, but I've got 11 years of agent experience. Yeah. And so, I'm doing, I operate a consulting business behind the scenes where I'm actually, dealing with agents and players formally. So I'm able to kind of get a lot of insight and, really just doing my best to make sure I'm operating without any conflicts of interest and just giving people good advice, but also, gathering some good information too to help me do my stuff with Babcock Hoops.
Yeah, 100%. And something that we've always been interested in. Can you tell us an interesting story about a time that you went into the draft process, pegging a guy, whether it's from the agent side or the evaluator side that you are now, where you thought that he is going to be the next big thing, and it just turned out to be a complete flop?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have one for you. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Man, I'm sorry.
No worries. And I guess the flip side of things, have you picked a guy that you thought is going to be the big thing, and everyone's like, no, he's going to bust?
I mean, I was really high on Luca. I mean, he went third, so I mean, it wasn't like he slipped that far. But I mean, it's really a tough deal when you're looking at the draft because I mean, even now is I think a lot of the media and fans look at things. Okay, this guy got drafted here. I told you so, kind of thing, right? Yeah. And I think one thing that people are surprised to hear a lot of times is that every single team evaluates players differently. I mean, if every team published their big board, the media and the fans would go nuts because there'd be so much discrepancies from team to team. Yeah. And so we're with Babcock Hoops, I kind of I run the charge as far as doing the mock draft, but we've got a full staff of guys that have a ton of experience. Yeah. And so we're operating as if we were an NBA team, and so we just happen to publish our stuff, and it might be a lot of times very different than a lot of media outlets because we're not playing copycat here. We're actually giving out our own opinions, evaluating these guys, gathering information. And so, to say a guy's a bust or he's not, I think a lot of it is a guy's got to get with the right team and, get an opportunity, And so, I mean, I think there's a number of players, and you got, both sides of the coin on this. If, guys that get the right opportunity and it just works out, and other teams in the league might have not valued that guy like that. And one guy that comes to mind with that, that situation exactly as Josh Okogie from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
From Georgia Tech. I personally wasn't that high on him going into the draft, and I think Minnesota took him at like 20, and I thought it was a horrible pick. But they believed in him. They gave him a role, and he's done really well, and he's really kind of carved out a nice career for himself. And if he hadn't been taken there, what would have happened? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
100%.
Yeah, no, I think Okogie is one of those guys where if he slips to 29-30 and he never gets any minutes, they would say, oh, he can't play offensively in the NBA, and he never gets to do that, bulldog mentality role. But the draft really is hard because I know we were right about Luka Doncic. Like, me and him, out of all our friends that we know, he was my number one, and I wasn't even confused about it. I saw, DeAndre Ayton, he's a special talent. He's so long and athletic. I said, but centers don't win you games anymore. No, I said, Luka, he can shoot the ball, he can dribble the ball, he can pass the ball, he can do everything you want to do. But I was famously wrong about Trae Young. I'm a Hawks fan, and I was devastated when we traded Luka for Trae and a pick. I thought it was gonna be like Pau Gasol, trade all over again, or when we took.
My uncle made that trade, by the way.
What did you say?
My uncle made that Pau Gasol trade.
Oh, really?
Oh, he did? No, that makes me look really bad. Or when we didn't get, Chris Paul and stuff like that. But, I was really wrong about Trae, and I'm happy. So it is really hard to evaluate these guys.
It's like, it's like you said, fit, all these things play such a big factor in, the team that takes him. Like Mo Bamba, for example, would he be better on a team, like if the Celtics had drafted him instead of the Magic, would he be better than he is right now? Everyone knew he was a prospect. He was kind of raw coming out of college. Would he have been drafted as early if we knew about that?
Right. No, you're hitting the nail on the head. I think, again, sort of just piggybacking on what I was saying before is, a player gets an opportunity in a team that's going to invest time and money and resources into him and allow him to develop confidence. Because this is sports. It's so much about confidence. If you don't have confidence, you're not going to be able to succeed. And if you're trying to find the spot where you're able to, learn and grow and develop, it's really important. And it's really hard to, sort of pinpoint, who fits where and all that. And so many different philosophies of how the game should be played.
Yeah, and I guess finally going into it, have you heard anything from your end or anywhere in the league? Like, what is the process going to be like with everything going around with Corona and everything?
Yeah, there's so much uncertainty. My phone's been blowing up with agents last week or two of everybody's scrambling. Hey, what do we do? And all these players want to start signing with us and training, which costs a lot of money. And so it's the question is, okay, if a prospect's starting to train now and an agent's having to pay for it, what are you training for? And when is it? It's agent can't pay for a player's housing and training forever without any kind of end in sight, which is creating a lot of complications in the back end of things. And as far as I'm hearing on the NBA side, they're going to do everything they possibly can to get a playoffs going. Which my dad works for the Milwaukee Bucks, so we're watching that closely because if they end up scratching the season, the Bucks and Lakers get screwed the most.
100%.
And so what I'm hoping for is they find out a way of playing games probably without fans in July sometime, and move back free agency in the draft to August. I think that would be, realistic, good situation.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Is there any particular player who you were looking for to see how they did in the tournament that maybe now isn't getting that opportunity to show that, and they in turn hurt their draft stock?
No, not necessarily with the tournament. By that point, at least for us, we know everybody that's playing college. We watched all year. We knew that most of these guys going into the season. I think where there's more concern is without a pre-draft process, some of these guys that are somewhat of mystery men, that kind of needed that process of the NBA Combine and workouts and interviews and with the uncertainty of that, that's thrown a curveball. For example, Jay Scrubb, which I don't know if you guys have heard this guy's name. He's a junior college star from Louisville. He's committed to Louisville for next year. I think he's going to put his name in the draft. With him being somewhat of a hidden gem in the junior college ranks, he kind of needed the combine. He needed the workouts 100%. To kind of get over the hump. Everybody knows his name. boys, I don't know if they're going to be able to get the information they need to feel comfortable staying. Maybe they will.
Yeah.
And a couple other guys like that. Josh Hall is a high school kid at a prep school in Carolina that's going to be eligible for the draft. I think he might put his name in. Same story. Mocker Maker situation. A fifth-year prep guy that they did an appeal with the NBA to have him be in this year's draft, and it got approved. So, I mean, these guys are probably going to put their names in. I'm interested to see how it unfolds for them because it's just what information are they going to be able to get.
Is that Thonmaker's brother? Does he have a brother or something?
Cousin, I believe.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
cool.
Interesting.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We don't have any further questions. Is there anything else you want to tell us or anything you want to plug if you got, Babcock Hoops or whatever?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, with no live games, planned anytime soon, we're not slowing down our coverage of the draft, and we're watching a lot of video and doing a lot of homework. We'll keep pumping out content. So follow us on Twitter at Babcock Hoops. My personal account's Matt Babcock 11. And check our site babcockhoops.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
one.